Welcome to the Rippy Effect. I'm Jackie Hunter, your host.
Previously, he worked as Director of Education. You are a gastroenterologist.
Welcome to the show. Thank you. And I hail Atlanta. Yes.
I have been telling my guests that it's so important for them to drink lots of water. Welcome to the second season of the Rippy Effect. This year we'll have some exciting guests and we'll have some interesting videos as well as a section in the show where we'll learn about some of the Black scientists and female scientists who've added so much to our country. They're no longer hidden like the scientists of hidden figures. So I hope that you will continue to watch the show. It's only about 30 minutes long, and it'll be a great show for you as well as your middle school students or high school students who might be considering a STEM career. Do you know what a mechanical engineer is? Well, I normally think of a mechanical engineer as a problem solver. All engineers are problem solvers. Well, a mechanical engineer, as far as I know, is a problem solver who solves problems about mechanical devices. But I'm going to let this short video show you what a mechanical engineer does and can do.
Meet Peter, Sarah and Mo. They each have very different interests, skills and passions. They've all started thinking about what job they'd like to do in the future. They've all heard of engineers, but aren't 100% sure about what they do. Peter loves working out how things work, from washing machines to radios. However, he's not sure what that has to do with being an engineer. Peter, it's not just washing machines and radios that need fixing, it's also cars. And perhaps instead of fixing cars, you are designing them. Or testing them. Making them smoother, safer, or greener. Or rather than cars, how about aeroplanes, trains, boats, or tanks? Sarah loves sport. All sport. But she's struggling to see what that's got to do with engineering. Sarah, did you know that the incredible feats we saw in the Olympics were only possible due to the collaborative work between athletes and engineers? But it's not only in the velodrome. Engineers can tell us when a goal is scored or a wicket falls. They've enabled ski jumpers to fly further, keeping hang gliders in the air and racing yachts on the water. With a career in engineering, Sarah could be helping to win future gold medals. Mo is passionate about global ecology and realises that engineering is helping to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. With the right qualifications, Mo could be part of a team that installs wind farms. He could be analysing wind speed and direction data to determine the best location for a wind farm, or analysing and testing the blade designs that harvests the wind energy. For Peter, Sarah and Mo, engineering represents the start line, the start to a career problem solving, designing, travelling, creating and team building. Where will your path lead?
Welcome back to the Rippy Effect. I'm Jackie Hunter, your host, and this evening we have the pleasure of talking with Rasheeda Clark. Rasheeda is a mechanical engineer. Welcome to the show, Rasheeda.
Hi, how are you? I'm so happy to be here with you and give you a little insight on what I do for work and my career choices. Thank you.
I'm so glad to have you. Now, my understanding of a mechanical engineer is that it's someone who helps to solve problems that are related to mechanical devices. And I'm sure that my young viewers out there would like to hear more about what you do as a mechanical engineer.
Okay, let me start by just, I guess, clarifying what a mechanical engineer does, for one.
Mhm.
And one of the broadest engineering disciplines is mechanical engineering. So, with mechanical engineering, you can do design, development, or implementation. And most of mechanical engineers function on components, different pieces and components, and mechanical structures. But with mechanical engineering, your career path can be very, very wide. So it opens up the doors for everything, like as far as mechanical structures. You can get into different things like building cars. You can work at a utility company because they deal with a lot of technical issues. And also, you can get into the realm of IT because that also deals with a lot of technical issues. So, that's just to make the long story short about what you could do as a mechanical engineer.
Hmm.
And just to tell you about how I began my career in mechanical engineering, I started, I think it was the seventh grade, with a program in my high school, well, in my grade school called the Prime Program. And it was for inner city youth in Philadelphia who were interested in math and sciences.
Is
During
that
that program, we went to colleges in the general area every summer and participated in engineering activities for about a couple months just during a summer break. And from seventh grade to, I think, the ninth grade, I participated in that program and graduated to the high school program, which enabled us to stay on campus at those colleges um, during the summertime. So
sounds great?
that's how I got interested in engineering.
Wow. Is that
Yep.
program still available or something similar to it?
So unfortunately, that program is no longer available.
Mhm.
They did have something called Upward Bound that was similar to the Prime program, and
Mhm.
I'm not quite sure if that program it still exists. If you look around different schools and colleges, they implement programs for inner city youth throughout their organization on a yearly basis. I'm seeing that a lot now. So that kind of is probably the reason why there aren't so many of those programs like they had in the past.
Because the colleges are
Yeah.
offering these programs now.
hmm
That's
It's
one
a
of the,
good way to recruit people to get into the sciences and technology career path.
I agree. And I have been telling my young listeners that getting into a STEM career is the
hmm
way to go. I have seen so
Always.
many people go to college, and when they come out, they can't find a career. They can't find a job. They owe a lot of money
Right.
to college. But if you have a STEM career, a lot of times there's scholarship money available
Absolutely.
and all kinds of good programs because there is a great need for
Yep.
engineers. Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, unfortunately, we are living in some troubled times now with the coronavirus,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering how that is being dealt with on in your job situation.
So as of, I guess it was March the 12th of this year, I actually manage a team of technical experts. And what they do is they address all the applications that the internal customers use throughout the organization. So every single application that is used by our employees is managed by my team of 12 people. So that's like from implementation to user friendly, different trainings, everything from nuts to bolts with these applications that are being used throughout the organization. And we were partially remote here and there because with applications, there's a lot of testing going on. And sometimes that testing can't take place until after business hours.
Uh-huh.
So we have people on a rotating basis that work remotely anyways. So it wasn't too big of a hit for us to transition our entire framework to online. And that has been going on since March the 12th. The transition was actually easy for us because we were already prepared for what was to come. And also with our communication strategies that I put in place with my team, it was not hard to keep things moving. So we didn't miss a beat at all. And I
That's
think that
great.
our organization is aware that we're doing a really good job with keeping everybody up to speed during this time.
That's wonderful. It's a great job. And I know that there are some young people who might be interested in becoming an engineer, and there's so many different fields in engineering. What kind of advice would you like to give them?
So the first thing I would like to say about participating in an engineering career path is that it takes a lot of hard work, dedication, and effort. Um, I started college in 94. I took a break. I didn't graduate till 2002. There was a lot of hardships that went between 1994 and 2002. And on top of that, just trying to stay focused. There were a lot of classes that I didn't think that I would get through because I didn't have the mentors that I needed to help push me and guide me in the right direction. So definitely, I would say if you're interested in this type of career path as an engineer, make sure you find some suitable mentors that you can reach out to, and they can help you along with not just classes, but with just being able to network and get the information you need to prepare you. And so you can make the right decision on if this is what you want to do or not.
That's
Um,
good
yeah,
advice.
patience as well. So make sure you are a patient person because you can't expect to graduate and then have this big, wonderful job. It takes a lot of patience, hard work, and dedication. Um, Employers like to see that you are participating in co-op opportunities, that you have internships. So look out for those. Make sure that you are putting yourself in a group of folks that are focused on making sure you get those type of opportunities before you get into the workforce, because that's a plus. When I do interviews now, the first thing I look for is work history, even for college students. Are you working on campus? Are you working in your field? Did you volunteer for certain technical things that are going on within the organization that you're going to school for? Like, what is it that you think that you need to do to put yourself forward and just to be in the realm of your career path? Take accountability for the decisions you make as far as job choices, because that could play a big part as well. Even if something may not pay as much at the time, if it's a good experience, then take that. You know what I mean? It can only help you in the future.
Wow, that's
So
that's good advice.
that's my advice.
Very, very good advice. And what
Yeah.
I really appreciate it, and I'm sure my young listeners will also. And I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show and continued success in your career.
Thank you so much, Miss Jackie.
My pleasure. And don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. One of the things that Miss Rasheeda Clark said that I think is very important is that she learned a little bit about engineering when she was in 7th grade. And that is what motivated her and kept her interest in that science. It's very important that our young people in upper elementary and in middle school are exposed to engineering and technology, mathematics, what I call STEM careers. Welcome back to the Rippy Effect. I'm Jackie Hunter, your host. Have you ever heard of Captain Ed Dwight? Well, I hadn't either until recently, but I'm going to share with you an article that I read about him. Ed Dwight was going to be the first African American in space until he wasn't. Now, this was during the 1960s under John F. Kennedy's administration. The Kennedy administration sought a diverse face to the space program, but for reasons unknown, the pilot was kept from reaching the stars. Now, this happened after President Kennedy's assassination. But guess what? Ed Dwight is still alive, and I'm going to let you hear him say what happened during that time.
President John F. Kennedy had campaigned on a platform of civil rights and support for the space program. Seeing the huge upside of recruiting a black astronaut, the White House gives the Pentagon an order. The Air Force responds fast. There's a young black pilot ready to start training. Captain Edward Dwight Jr., with a top aeronautics degree and 2,000 flying hours under his belt.
I did not dream that I was going to become the first black astronaut. That never entered my mind because that was a big obstacle standing in my way. And I knew there was going to be a racial component to that obstacle, but I didn't know it was going to be as sophisticated and as determined as it was.
In charge of training pilots to recommend to NASA's astronaut program is U.S. Air Force flying ace Captain Chuck Yeager, the first man to break the sound barrier. But Yeager is skeptical about integrating the program and says so years later in a memoir.
He was totally shocked that the Air Force power structure would force this to happen, not consult him, and not bring him into the loop and prepare for my coming down there.
August 1962. The Air Force announces Dwight is to start phase 1 of the training, a set of grueling physical tests.
The first phase is the academic qualifications, the flying record qualifications, and then the physical tests. They really take these men to their physical limits to see how they function in a centrifuge and how much stress they can take. And he passes that. The next phase is the flying phase. Learning how to do maneuvers, and these men are tremendously competitive.
Dwight graduates in October '63, 8th out of 16 in his class. He's recommended to NASA along with 26 other candidates from around the country. Now it's up to the space agency to make its selection.
Was there a Negro boy in the last 30 or so that you brought here for consideration?
No, there was not.
Dwight claims Yeager was biased against him.
He called all the instructors in, guys that were going to instruct me in test pilot school. And he announced to these people, if he graduates, Kennedy wants to turn the space program into a black space program.
We don't know if Chuck Yeager derailed Ed Dwight's career, and historians have searched for evidence and haven't found it.
Are you now, in fact, completely out of the astronaut program? Is there a possibility of you ever being back in?
I don't know. I don't have any idea.
You feel it's what's happened to you is a setback for civil rights opportunities?
No, I would rather not comment on that. Had I succeeded, they wouldn't have no more excuses about how ignorant black people were, how they couldn't learn, how they couldn't accomplish. I was in the right place at the wrong time.
I shared the video with you about Ed Dwight because I'm passionate about the space program, and I only heard of him a few years ago. Can you imagine if Kennedy had not been assassinated? Do you know that President John Kennedy wanted the first two men to walk on the moon to be one black and one white? That would have been a wonderful thing for our country. would have been so much further along, I believe. Well, there's another very important person who was part of the space program, and you might have heard of her because of the movie called Hidden Figures. Her name is Mary Jackson. Mary was a human computer. Can you imagine? She was given data and she had to make calculations like a real computer, like an electronic computer we have today. So she worked for NASA as a human computer, and I want to share with you a short video so you can see her and learn more about her.
In 1958, Jackson became NASA's first black female engineer during segregation.
And later this month, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi will honor her and the women in the Hidden Figures movie at the U.S. Capitol for their outstanding contributions to the space program.
This is an honor that Jackson's family tells 10 on Your Side's Kiana Patterson they are excited to receive on her behalf.
And her family says they wish she could see just how many people she influenced as a trailblazer, but they tell me this honor will be the biggest one she's received. Committed to science.
It was just what she did.
And service.
Always willing to lend a helping hand.
Mary W. Jackson helped pave the way for women and minorities at NASA. She worked with the wind tunnels and the airflow around a spacecraft. And during segregation, she became the first black woman engineer at the agency. But to Wanda Jackson, she was just grandma.
She did help design the space shuttle. We got excited because she bought a model home. So we was like, ooh, the space shuttle, the space shuttle. But it kind of sort of died down because it's grandma.
Jackson is one of 3 women featured in the movie Hidden Figures for their contributions to the race to space.
That's how she was in real life. She was that diva, that sassy, but at the same time, everybody loved her.
Wanda says she's learned a lot about her grandma over the years. Like, she took a demotion from an engineer in 1979 to manage the women's program at NASA, where she worked hard to improve the hiring and promotion process for women.
They were able to grow, climb the ladder, and retire. A lot of people she brought in under her wing, and that's what she taught us. Not to be crabs, but you always reach back and help that person climb that ladder.
Jackson passed away in 2005, but her legacy lives on.
At least she did get recognized. She finally got her awards, and with all of this, Grandma did go down in history. I will say that.
Remember that STEM careers are the careers of the future. This concludes our show. I'm Jackie Hunter, your host. Until next time.